all three of these insecure attachment styles, anxious preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, and fearful avoidant, the things that they have in common, although they look different on the surface, the things that they have in common is they all have one core wound that they share. And that one core wound is I am unsafe.
This is By Joyan Season 2. I'm your host, Joyan Chan, and every Wednesday we bring you inspiring stories, powerful message, and fun conversations with me and my special guests and friends, and it's my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. This podcast is for you if you're looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. Now let's dive into today's episode and get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. As a child, she lived in a very unpredictable and chaotic environment where she never knew if she could rely on her parents to meet her emotional needs. This led her to absorb unhealthy relationship ideas based on what she was witnessing. She believed relationships were supposed to be unbalanced, uncertain, and overall chaotic. Prior to becoming a certified attachment practitioner and founding Securely Loved, she was an executive leader, university lecturer, and a published author. She has dedicated her entire career working with adults in the realm of personal growth and professional development. She's here today to empower you to become securely loved and attached. So guys, help me welcoming our guest today, the relationship and attachment trauma practitioner, Bev Mitelman. Bev, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you for the kind words. I'm happy to be here.
What you do is just beautiful, beautiful work. I'm so excited. The reason why I wanted to invite you on the podcast is for a very selfish reason, because it's something that I've been learning recently, and that's being brought to my awareness. I've been listening to podcasts about attachment style, trying to find out what is my attachment style and how to, how do I improve myself, right? So that's why we have you here today. Hope you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. I think that attachment style, I mean, I'm biased, but I find the world of attachment styles to be fascinating. And I am learning every day. This is all I do, but I'm learning even every day how much our attachment style impacts our thoughts, our emotions, how we show up in the world, our perception. So it is so very important, for our mental health and our sense of self. So, yeah, happy to talk about this with you and your audience.
Beautiful. Yep. So, okay, let's talk about what is an attachment style. How would you define it?
So, attachment theory is really a body of work that emerged back in the 1950s. So it's been around for some time, where it was looking at how we emotionally bond to another human, right? And the work originally was looking at children and their primary caregivers. So in this case, it was like their mothers. And so the original studies were looking at when a child, a very young child, like a toddler or even a baby, was in a room with their mother, how they interacted. Then they asked the mother to leave the room. They observed the reaction of the child. Some children became very upset. Some children became clingy. Some children got very anxious. Some children didn't even notice that their mother had left. There was a spectrum of how the children reacted. And then what they did in the same study is they reintroduced the parents into the room and they watched what happened. And you could imagine some children, again, were extremely excited. Some children didn't notice the mother re-entered, and some children were almost like angry at the mother for leaving. This started to give us some clues around how we actually emotionally bond to another person and how this impacts our emotional patterns, our thought patterns, our communication, and our coping mechanisms. And so what we know now, because there's been a lot more studies and we're a lot further ahead of the research, what we know now is that we say that it's estimated approximately half of our population is securely attached and half is insecurely attached. And I'm going to explain what that really means. So, securely attached is a term that we give to someone who grew up in a home where they had a primary caregiver who was very attuned to their emotional needs. So if a baby cried or a baby needed coddling, the mother, the father, the aunt, the grandmother, doesn't matter. The primary caregiver was very responsive to this child. So the child felt safe, the child felt secure, the child felt that if they were to express an emotion, that emotion would be given space and that someone would respond safely. And so they learned when we're talking about very young children, by the way. So we're talking about children from like 0 to 5,
Okay.
right? This is when as humans we are most suggestible.
Mm.
So this is when you have the biggest impact in life. So that early relationship that you had with your caregiver is so critically important. Now, you might not physically remember. Most
Yeah.
people don't have memories before 5,
Yeah.
but subconsciously, you do remember what you learned and the patterns and the sense of safety and security that you would have felt. So this child would have experienced very young this consistency, right? It was predictable how the caregiver would react, right? So there's no parents on this planet that's going to get it right all of the time,
Yeah.
right? We all make mistakes. I'm a parent too. But what we're looking for is like consistently, right? So the child was consistently loved and nurtured, right? So that generally what that the outcome of that is that a young child generally grows up and they feel that love is all about connections. They feel safe and comfortable in themselves. They trust their emotions. They understand their emotional landscape because their caregiver modeled that for them. They taught them about emotions, right? Most importantly, too, this young child learns that they can trust other people.
Yep. Trust is a big one.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge, right? So that's one type of person. And you can imagine when that child grows up and they have this sort of patterning in their mind and they become adults and they enter into adult type relationships with friends, with colleagues, with other family members, and eventually with a romantic partner,
Yep.
they tend to do very well in these types of relationships. Emotionally, they tend to be pretty steady. Like these are not people who are emotionally volatile. They tend to be pretty steady. They tend to be very expressive. Like if I have something, if I'm upset about something, I'll just tell you I didn't like what you said.
Okay.
They tend to have good relationships with boundaries. They know what they'll accept and what they won't accept. And they tend to have a very good set of healthy coping behaviors. Now, coping behaviors is just the things that we do as humans when we're stressed out. When we're stressed out or we're up against a threat. There's lots of good things we can do. So if I'm stressed out or up against a threat, I could listen to music. I could go for a drive. I can go for a walk. I can play with my puppy. All these things that we know that will help calm down our nervous system. And
Yep.
people who are securely attached, they rely typically on a good set of healthy behaviors. Okay, so they do very well in relationships.
I don't know any of these people in my life securely attached. Couldn't think of anyone. And yeah, which is surprising because when you said, half of the population is securely attached, I was like, really?
I get this a lot. By the way, I just want to clarify. Like
Yeah.
the studies vary between, they say 40 and 60%. So it might be as low as 40% of the population. Most of the studies have been done in North America as well. So, I'm saying the world, but we don't really have statistics right now in that regard. So it might be 40%, but just for the sake of argument, it's a segment of the population. And it's
Yeah.
also important to note that when we talk about secure, like we're gonna, and I'm gonna get into it more, but
Okay.
so nobody is 100% secure.
Right.
Nobody's like, people sort of lean this way or they lean that way. They have more of the traits of the secure versus more of the traits. So you're never going to meet someone who's 100% secure.
Yeah. I don't think that's possible, right? Because we are all human. So yeah, I
Yeah,
do have one question about the childhood, when you talk about that, like how we develop our patterns and all that, right? Subconsciously. So is it okay, how should I put it? So is it one incident, let's say, when I was a kid, my mom left me in the I lost my mom, I got lost, and I became insecure, or I became fearful because my parents were not around, right? They left me, abandoned me, although it was just maybe I got lost, right? Or they went somewhere. But as a child, I didn't know that. So is it one incident that will help me develop the fearful avoidance style, or could be any style, right? Or it was consistent behavior of my parents, maybe they neglected my needs, emotional needs, physical needs all the time, or it happened because of one incident. You get what I mean?
I do. And
Okay.
I have to say, Joy,
Yep.
I do a lot of these interviews and nobody's ever asked me that question. And it's an incredibly good question. So thank you. Very good question. So I'm going to say that with a lot of things that we talk about in psychology,
Yep.
it depends. It depends. Oftentimes, we're talking about a series of events over a period of time. Oftentimes, it's like if if you hear over and over and over that, you're not smart
Yep.
or you're not creative, you tend to internalize the message. Usually it's not from just one time, right? It's like over and over, right? Or if, I don't know, kids are so mean, right? If you wore glasses as a kid and kids made fun of you at school and your parent also made fun of you or something, you would develop this, you know, I'm not good enough, or I
Yep.
like these. It's generally when you're exposed to these negative messages over time, you
Mm,
tend to believe that they're true and they tend to form into what we call your core wounding, your core
right.
wounds, right? Now, again, attachment styles, when we talk about this is learned behavior. So I want to be clear that we don't diagnose anyone with an attachment style. Everyone has an attachment style. It's the set of learned behavior that we learn. Now, to
Mm,
go back to your question, which was so astute, um, it really depends on the intensity and the emotional charge that a particular event carried. So,
mm,
what does that mean? A mother leaving their child at a young age, like leaving,
yep.
abandoning, and not coming back, would be terrifying and really awful for a younger child, right? So that would carry a very deep and difficult wounding with it.
Mm,
So that as a traumatic event, right? So we talk about trauma, but I just want to distinguish trauma. We have traumatic events, things that happen to us. Trauma is how we internalize it, how we perceive it, and how we work through it. Now, children don't have a lot of capacity to internalize and work through trauma. Many adults don't have this capacity either. You have to learn, right? But what children do is they internalize it usually as there's something wrong with me. So what would likely happen is if a young child experienced their mother leaving, the child might adopt some narrative or story that, it must be because of me that my mom left.
yeah.
And then this turns into I'm not good enough, like the core wounding, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable.
Yep.
I will be abandoned. And these are the stories and the core wounds that we end up carrying into adulthood, right? Now, it's possible that, a mother had to leave their baby because they had to search for work elsewhere,
You're right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
very common. So they had no choice. They had to provide for the family. The child doesn't understand that. The child still just says, if I was better, my mommy wouldn't have left me.
Mm,
So this is where the wounding comes. So when we talk about abandonment, sometimes we talk about perceived abandonment because the child will perceive it as abandonment, although the parent is not really abandoning them. To just, to finalize your question, it can be a series of repeated events or patterns of behavior. If a child over a period of years is trying to get the attention of their caregiver, and the caregiver is neglectful or is very strict with them or is very critical of them, like all of these things, and this is just sort of a pattern of behavior over years, that's very wounding to a child.
yeah.
There could also be an event where, the child is separated from a parent, like the parent left, the
Yep.
parent died, the parent became ill.
Mm,
Uh, all of these situations where it's like one singular event, but because it's such a big traumatic event, it can absolutely imprint on us.
yeah. I mean, that is so powerfully answered. I mean, thanks
Yeah.
for, answering that question. The reason why I asked is because I've been thinking about how the hell did I develop these patterns? Like I was thinking, like you said, before five, we had no idea what happened. I couldn't remember any single thing. I didn't have any memory about my childhood. Like, what could possibly happen? That I have this subconscious belief or patterns about myself, right? And so that's why I was like, why? What happened? So I know you have a quiz to find out what is your attachment style. So is this the only way for people to find out their attachment style? Or there are other ways as well, maybe hypnosis, I don't know, NLP.
Uh, I mean, there's lots of different ways. So first of all, one of the things I want to say in regards to
Yeah.
understanding the first couple of years of your own life, speaking with family could be helpful, right? Like you can say to them, did anything happen in those early years? And oh, your mother had to go away for 6 months and travel. That might give you a clue. Like there might be things in your history that you don't know about. So ask your family. Sometimes they know. Um, I mean, I believe sometimes that different forms of therapy are very helpful.
Mm,
I've tried inner child, I've tried CBT. Those were somewhat helpful for me. EMDR, which is eye movement,
yep.
rapid desensitization to release trauma in the body, that was helpful for me.
Okay.
And I did that at the same time that I was doing the work around reprogramming my subconscious core wounds to move towards secure attachment. So sometimes it's a combination of things that could really help. But in terms of understanding your attachment, you're right. On my website at securelylove.com, there's a little free quiz. It's a couple of questions, and it'll give you an idea of where you fall. But there are simpler ways.
Okay.
So because there are because there are very specific patterns, thought
Right.
patterns, emotional patterns, communication styles attributed to each one of the attachment styles. Oftentimes, I could have a very short conversation with someone and sort of figure out where they're at. So I could do that now if you're open to it. Do you want to, you don't want to go there? You're
I
like,
don't know.
no,
I mean,
okay.
okay, let's talk about, okay, for people who have no idea what we are talking about, how many attachment styles out there and what are the attachment styles are we talking about?
Okay, no problem. I'll give you a chance to think about if you want to do this exercise. We don't have to get too personal, but like it's interesting because I think it'll give people an idea of what we're talking about. So
Mm,
I will back up and go back more to the theory part.
okay.
So we talked a couple minutes ago about how half the population or 40% is secure. Now
Yep.
the other segment of the population is what we call they have an insecure attachment style. So they did not secure bond, they did not emotionally secure, or sorry, bond securely with their caregiver. And in this spectrum of um, insecure attachment styles, we have a couple of subcategories. Okay. So the first subcategory is the anxious preoccupied.
Hmm.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have the dismissive avoidant. And then in the middle, we have the fearful avoidant. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about these characters,
Yeah.
these characteristics. So, someone who is anxious, preoccupied, generally is someone who experienced, as we're talking about, abandonment or perceived abandonment, right, of
Mm,
a caregiver. So these people, they tend to have an emotional pattern where they feel lonely, they feel sad. Their core wounds that they carry around are generally around, like their fears are around, I will be abandoned, I will be excluded, I am unlovable, I am unlikable. So you can see how, because they sense that their caregiver wasn't attuned to them, they internalize this as there's all these things that are wrong with me. If I was more lovable, my mother would have stayed, right?
mm,
And this is what children do. And so the interesting thing is that these patterns live in our subconscious minds.
yep.
So our conscious mind, which is our awareness, really only is responsible for 3, 4, 5% of our thoughts, our behaviors, and our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So let we think about that for a moment. Three to
Right.
5%, which means that the other bulk of our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior is guided by our subconscious mind. People are unaware of this, right? Everyone likes to think, well, I'm completely in control and I have free agency over my mind. In reality, your mind is like a computer that has all these stored programs, these patterns, and you just play them on autopilot
Mm,
and they guide you. And these patterns that you've learned early on, they're like rules for how to give and receive love,
yeah.
how to interact with people, right? And so we all have these different set of rules in our head, like, well, you know, if they really loved me, they would do this. These are all
Yeah.
made up stories. Yeah, we
Yeah.
hear this all the time because in someone's mind,
Mm.
that's absolutely true. It doesn't mean it's true, but in their mind, it's true. Well, if they loved me, they would bring me flowers every Friday.
Okay.
So, anyways, going back to the anxious preoccupied, this individual has a very hard time emotionally regulating. They are reliant heavily on external people. So this is the type of person, I don't know if you have friends like this, Joy. Like if you have a girlfriend who is like always in a relationship,
Yeah, I was
like,
just thinking about her. Yeah, while you're talking about it, I was like, that's her. Yes.
right. And oftentimes these people won't even break up with boyfriend number one. They've got boyfriend number two
Yeah.
like lined up.
Yes.
And we think that's so crazy. And we think, oh my God, like that, but it's because this person cannot. It's so uncomfortable for them to be alone. Their fear
Mm,
is, I will be abandoned. So they keep people on the sidelines in case someone leaves them, they can shift someone else back in because in their mind, their survival depends on being connected to that other person for
yeah.
self-validation, for reassurance, for attention, to help them, soothe their,
Like,
nervous system
yeah.
because they can't do any of this stuff on their own.
Yeah.
And so this is the type of person that we often see depicted, like in internet memes, as the person who's clingy,
Mm,
who's hanging on for dear life, which is not so different from like if you've ever been to a supermarket and you see a mom with a young child and the young child is hanging onto the mom's leg. Have you seen this? Next time you go into the grocery store, Joy, pay attention to the children and how they interact with their parent. Telling you, it's fascinating because they grow up into adults. So that child who's hanging off of the mother's leg, don't leave me, you know, is typically the person who grows up to have boyfriend after boyfriend after
Oh
boyfriend
my
after
God, that's
boyfriend.
my niece. Yes, it's my niece. And she's about 6 years old, and she's exactly what you just described. Yep.
And so what's important to understand is that it's because they feel so unstable or dysregulated when they don't have their person close by,
Yeah.
right? Like it's life or death for them. They actually feel like they're not going to survive if this person leaves them.
Yeah.
So, the work that we do is we help folks identify their core wounds and to rework some of these stories. Because again, a lot of these stories are things that we've made up in our mind. We
Hmm.
believe them to be true, but are they true? Like, so that's one of the things we do, and we help people, of course, connect back to their emotions and to learn how to self-soothe and to emotionally regulate. Now, what's so important to understand is about all three of these insecure attachment styles: anxious, preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, and fearful avoidant. The things that they have in common, although they look different on the surface, the things that they have in common is they all have one core wound that they share. And that one core wound is, I am unsafe. And it makes sense, right? Because we talked about how the baby with the mom who comes out of a home where they feel securely attached,
Yeah.
they felt love, predictability, security, safety.
Mm.
Safety to be themselves, safety to express themselves, safety to trust that others will respond to them in a healthy way.
Yeah.
But those who are insecurely attached didn't experience that dynamic in childhood. And so they grow up feeling unsafe in relationships.
Yep.
And so they develop a set of emotional patterns, communication styles, and coping mechanisms that are not healthy. Well, we'll say less healthy for the most
Yeah.
part. So I'll finish up with the spectrum because it's quite fascinating. So we have the anxious preoccupied who really feels best when they are really most often close to, let's say we'll use it in the romantic context, right? That they're close to their romantic partner. So this is the type of person that if you meet and you just started dating, they'll want to become exclusive and committed really fast.
Okay.
They move really fast in relationships.
Okay.
They want to sort of nail it down. They want that sense of comfort and certainty that you're going to be there. And they're also the person that's going to want to spend every day with you.
Oh God. Okay. It's a red
Have
flag.
you met?
Yeah. Right? Yeah,
Yeah,
my first boyfriend actually. Yeah.
yeah,
Was like every day, we have to meet every day. Even if we are not meeting, I have to call you, we have to video call. We're always on the
right.
phone. And it was too much for me. It
Too
was I
much.
the
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
So interesting.
Mhm.
So, some people really do want that level of closeness,
Yeah.
right?
Interesting.
Because it gives them reassurance that you won't leave. They're also the same people that will call like six, seven times in the day, like, are you okay? Are we okay? You seem upset. Are you angry with me? Because they're always on edge and nervous that their partner is going to leave them. Now, it's sad, right? Because they don't have the skill to rationally think and say, you know what, my partner's at work right now. They're fine. They're not leaving me. They just need to focus on work.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So the next person is the dismissive avoidant, which again also feels unsafe, right? Often came out of a home where there was emotional neglect. So sometimes they were parentified, meaning they had to grow up really fast and take on adult roles. They independence was really pushed on them from a young age. They weren't given a lot of assistance. If they were, for example, upset, either the parent would say, "Stop crying," or "I'll give you something to cry about,"
Okay. Yeah.
right? It's threatening, right? Or they would get punished for showing emotions. That happened in my household all the time. If I was angry, I was sent to my room. And you learn very quickly being angry is not allowed,
Mm. Yeah.
right? So that's emotional neglect where you're really just dismissing someone's emotional experience. Um, and so these folks, the dismissive avoidants, they learn to survive in life by repressing a lot of their emotions. And they grow up feeling like independence is really important. Freedom is very important. They believe that they're responsible for their own needs, which is true, but by extension, they also believe in a romantic sense that their romantic partner is also responsible for their own needs.
That's fair. Yeah, fair enough, right? Yeah.
Right? It's like, listen, I have a set of problems, I'll deal with it. You have problems, you deal with it.
Yeah.
There's a healthy balance in between, right? Where you normally would help each other, but that's in the world of someone who's truly leaning in dismissive avoidance.
Okay.
Um, they also they carry a very strong shame wound, and the shame being like, they really struggle to let people close to them in terms of intimacy. And the feeling is that if you get too close to me, you will see that I'm defective. You will see that there's something wrong with me. So it's the I am defective wounds, right? So they tend to be the people that keep you at arm's length,
Mm.
right? Like, listen, we'll go out for dinner, we'll have a nice time, but then go home. Don't spend the night. You're not meeting my family. Like they keep you at arm's
Okay.
length,
Yep.
because it's safer emotionally,
Hmm.
right? So these people, they grow up, generally they've got a very distinct pattern of behavior and emotional patterns also. They tend to be often irritable, like low level anxiety, frustrated, overwhelmed. Uh, they're often viewed as being secretive. I'm not sure they're really secretive, but it's just that they are very careful about who they let into their world. They are not very trusting of others.
Yeah.
And so you can see, and this is simply patterns that they learned from their childhood. They couldn't trust their mother to
Mm.
be there for them. So you don't learn that the world is a trusting place. So you come out into adulthood and you get into an adult relationship, and they have no modeling for what it is to care for someone else's emotional needs. They're like, what do you mean? You're upset? You want me to come over? Like, why? I'll see you on Thursday. Like, literally don't understand.
Yeah.
I've
Good
had these
answer.
conversations before. I've actually had these conversations. Yeah.
Were you the dismissive or your partner?
My partner was a dismissive avoidance.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I mean, I think he would try. He'd be like, "Well, you'll be fine tomorrow. You'll feel fine." I'm like, "Yeah, but I need some emotional comfort now." And he's like, "Oh." Like
Mm.
they don't even think about it. It's not like when we talk about patterning
Yeah.
and like rules for how we engage with other people, it's not a part of their rule book.
Yeah.
They didn't see it growing up. They don't know it. And so they have a difficult time in relationships. The
For sure.
one thing that they're very good with boundaries. So a dismissive avoidance is very protective of their space. And they're protective that you don't get too close. So a dismissive avoidant will generally be very specific, like, okay, if we start dating, we'll see each other twice a week, no more than that. You can come over, but you can't stay the night. I'll introduce you to my sister, but you're not meeting my mother. They're very they're good with boundaries, actually.
Okay. Okay.
but they don't like when their boundaries are crossed. They
Interesting.
don't like it because it makes them feel like they're being suffocated.
Yep.
So it's like if you're dating a dismissive avoidant and you just show up at his house because you baked him a cake, that's not going to please him.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Why not? Okay.
No. In fact, he'll probably accuse you of something, because again, he doesn't trust people. So that's his lens. So this has happened to me before. I dated a guy a while ago, my boyfriend, and he told me he wasn't feeling well, so he canceled plans with me. And I had already cooked dinner, and I was like, okay. And I was like, he's not feeling well, so I packaged up the dinner. I
Mm-hmm.
drove to his house and I put it on his front step because I thought he was sleeping. And I sent him a text and I said, when you wake up, dinner is on your front step. I hope you're feeling better.
It's so sweet. Yeah.
You see, I thought it was sweet too. He
Yeah.
did not. So this is such a beautiful example of how the perception that we hold and our attachment style, what we learned early on, colors the way that we view the actions of others. So he actually said to me, you didn't think I was really sick, huh? You thought I had another woman here. No, I didn't. I
Uh,
didn't actually. I just wanted to bring you dinner so that you had something to eat when you woke up. Like, so interesting, right? And we think
mhm.
that he's going to see this as, an act of service.
Mm-hmm.
And so love languages play into this too, right? Because the dismissive avoidance, again, they have difficulty with vulnerability and intimacy,
Mm.
not with sex. Because it's so interesting because dismissive avoidance generally they do enjoy physical touch and can very well have sex in a disconnected way, disconnected emotionally,
Wow, okay.
right? So they're not the ones to, after sex, cuddle for hours and have pillow talk and this and that, but they'll very much enjoy sex. Because sex means different things for different people.
Yep.
And there's also a whole variety, of different ways that we can have sex, some of which are much more intimate, like you're staring into each other's eyes.
Mm.
And there's other ways that are far less intimate. And those, you know, when someone who is not so well connected to their own emotions and is scared of being vulnerable and intimate, they will always gravitate towards scenarios that allow them to feel a level of connection that they're comfortable with, but not force them to go into too great a level of intimacy,
Mm.
right? So I don't know if this makes sense to you.
I mean, I find it fascinating.
It's so fascinating. Now, just to finish with the dismissive avoidant,
Okay.
this particular group of people often also has generally some unhealthy coping mechanisms or behavior. So we see a lot of addiction
Okay.
in this particular group of people. And it can be anything. It could be substances like drugs, alcoholism, gambling, pornography, shopping addiction, anything. And the reason is because they try so hard to push down their feelings. They're so uncomfortable. They have yet to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Because we know that that's how we heal. We have to let the emotions surface. We have to understand how they feel in our body, give them space. But this group of people from childhood, they were learned that, you know what? There's no space for emotions. Just get over it. And so we know that when we don't actually address our emotions, it still comes out in other ways, right? Like, and so those really difficult, hard feelings that they're running away from, that they don't want to feel, there's, you see a lot of addictive patterns over in this group. Also with the anxious preoccupied.
Okay.
So, and this has to do with emotional dysregulation again,
Mm. Okay, we'll talk about
because
that.
neither,
Emotional
yeah,
regulation. It's important.
Yeah, because that's so important.
Yeah.
Now, lastly, the third group in the middle, the fearful avoidant. The fearful avoidant is the most complex. It's the rarest form. So it's estimated that about 10% of the population have this attachment style.
Okay.
Now, the fearful avoidants are often referred to as the hot and the cold partner. They have traits from the anxious preoccupied and traits from the dismissive avoidant. And
Oh,
so they oscillate between being anxious and avoidant. So, uh, someone who's fearful avoidant, starting in a romantic relationship, could be in the beginning very present, a lot of fun, really engaging. Um, and seem really warm and open, and then they take a step back, and then if you don't hear from them for 2 days, 3 days, and then a few days later they're back in and they're all in, and then they take a step back. And the reason for this is really, it's quite sad, but once you hear it, you'll understand it, is that the children that grew up in homes where there was significant chaos, where there was no stable frame. So we're talking about oftentimes where there was like mental illness in the home, or there was abuse in the home, any kind of abuse.
okay.
Um, the child develops what's called a disorganized attachment or emotional bond to their caregiver. And that's actually the other name for the style, disorganized attachment. I call it fearful avoidance, but what it means is that the child is yearning to seek connection and closeness with this person that they love dearly, but they're also petrified of that person because that person is also harming them. So
Right.
you can imagine a relationship that a little girl, let's say, has with her father, and she loves her father dearly, and all she wants is his attention, love, acceptance, to be seen, right? Like she wants his affection. But, once in a while the father is drinking and becomes angry and just smacks her across the face. This child becomes so confused because they're desiring the affection from someone that they know is harming them. So
Mm-hmm.
they come closer, they run away. They come closer, they run away. Do you see how the pattern
Yes.
then moves into adulthood? And
Yeah.
so that's what it is that it's like, okay, I'm going to come closer to you because I really want that connection, but I'm afraid you're going to hurt me, so I'm going to run away.
Are these people are more they have a tendency of being in a abusive relationship, attracting
Oh,
abusive
you're
partner?
You're
Yeah.
asking another one of your really, really astute
Oh,
questions. You really are asking great
oh, thank you.
questions. So I get this question a lot. Is it true that we like fall in love with our father, or we fall in love with it, right? Because people say this, right? That
Yeah.
a girl's gonna marry her father and a boy's gonna marry his
Yeah.
mother. It's not exactly that simple. What we tend to do is we tend to recreate the dynamic that we had with our primary caregiver. So, if the dynamic that I'll use like my father as an example. So the dynamic that I had with my father was not healthy. It was very chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
He was sometimes kind to me and sometimes really mean to me. To some degree, I had, I think, sought out a relationship that was similar. Now, I was married a long time. I was
Mm-hmm.
married for 23 years. My husband was not like this at all. My husband was that secure person that we talk about.
Wow.
Like, yeah, he was a beautiful man. He still is. So that's not who I'm talking about. But the man who I dated after I separated from my husband, I was drawn to him like a moth to a flame because he the way he interacted with me was just like my father. It sparked something in me. So he didn't look like my father. The dynamic that I had with him was like my father. So in my mind, it was like pulling up a familiar pattern. It's like my mind is like, oh, I know this dance. We got
Mm,
this. Now, your subconscious mind is not, it's always going to pull you towards what's familiar,
yes.
not what's best for you. Like your subconscious mind is not worried about what's best for you.
Yes.
So, but it will pull you towards what's familiar. So whatever is already patterned in there is typically what, you get drawn towards, and then you end up becoming attracted to that because it feels familiar. So the work that you need to do is to unpack that and to start understanding that we can, using specific tools to talk specifically to the subconscious mind, because that's where the patterns are at, we can reprogram those patterns to create new patterns. So every single person that has ever said on your podcast or to you as a friend, I don't know, I keep attracting the same bad partner. We
Yeah.
know that you'll
Yes.
keep doing the same thing unless you reprogram the pattern that you have in your subconscious mind. And it's not enough to say just like a daily affirmation, like, because that's the conscious awareness. Like, today I'm gonna go on a date with someone who's good for me.
Nope, not gonna happen.
What's going to happen is you'll go out on a date with someone who's good for you, but you'll likely not find them attractive. You'll likely find them boring. You'll likely, because you're still sparked by the old pattern.
Yeah.
So you have to eradicate the old pattern and put in a new pattern. Anyways, this whole spectrum of people who are insecurely attached, they generally have a harder time in relationships. Um, they have all sorts of coping behaviors. Their communication style can be quite difficult, and this is all out of protectionism. They're trying to protect themselves and they're trying to regulate again their own nervous system. So these folks emotionally are typically volatile.
Mm,
They've got, significant triggers. And so it doesn't take a lot sometimes to set someone off. And so, the work in coming back to emotional regulation, understanding your wounds and your triggers, I want people to understand that you do this for yourself because get to a place where you can calm down your mind, right? Because it doesn't feel good to always be on edge and irritable and like anxious and like what's going to happen next, and it doesn't feel good. You're not relaxed.
right.
And then you can learn to calm down your body, and then you're in this beautiful place where you could then, start understanding, okay, what do I actually need from myself? What do I need from others? What's important to me? And then, form these more intimate relationships, authentic relationships with people. And I think that life is all about relationships. And that is, Esther Perel will say that too, the quality of your life. It's
Yeah.
really reflective on the quality of your relationships. And I like to add on to that to say that actually attachment styles is the number one predictor for the quality of the relationships you will have.
Yeah. Okay, so okay, let's say okay, I have so many questions. I do have time.
Okay.
Okay. Um, let's say we are, someone is in this side of the spectrum right now, they are insecurely attached. Is the approach different for each attachment style? We talk about anxious, preoccupied, dismissive, avoidant, fearful, avoidant. Is the approach different for each type if they want to become securely attached?
Great question. No, the approach is
Yeah.
the same.
Okay.
The challenges will be different. So the approach is the same. First, what we do is we identify the core wounds.
Mm,
So I would normally start working with an individual and I would ask, not, tell me what happened when you were 6 years old. I would actually start the conversation with, tell me something that happened today, yesterday, last week, in recent memory that really made you upset. So the reason that I do that is because most often when people will say interesting things, right? They'll be like, I had a really difficult conversation with my boss and I got upset because he was forcing me to do this and that and I was uncomfortable. Well, that gives me a clue as to where your wounding is. Or I was in traffic and someone cut me off and I got really upset. Well, that's a different set of wounding, right?
Hmm.
My sister called me and said some things and it really upset me. So, why do I need to know what's going on in the person's mind today? Because we're trying to see where the wounds are today. We
Okay.
know they come from childhood, but we're trying to assess like what is still showing up in a prevalent way, like in a heightened way today. I ask a bunch of questions and I'm able to sort of figure out, okay, thematically, a lot of what you're talking to me about is you feel disrespected. Maybe that's it, right?
Hmm.
Like especially the example of being cut off or conversation with a family member and they didn't listen to you, let's say, or you feel unheard and unseen.
Yep.
So that's how we identify the core wounds based on the emotional responses to what is going on today.
Wow.
Um, yes, right. So it's like it's really the here and now.
Yes.
And then what we can do is we can use a number of different exercises. One of my favorite is it's called auto suggestion. But it's to counteract some of the stories that we've put into our minds that feed into this core wounds,
Okay.
right? So let's say the core wounds, and there's like dozens of core wounds, right? But let's say the core wound is I am disrespected or I will be disrespected, right? So you could imagine if someone has a core wound, I will be disrespected, how that would impact how they show up in the world. So they may not, for example, approach someone in a cafe that they like because they're afraid they'll be disrespected. They may not apply for a promotion at work because they fear that they're not respected enough. Like
Okay.
it holds people back,
Yep.
right? From living. Yeah. And so you could also imagine that when someone has a core wound, and we all have core wounds, by the way, but when somebody has a core wound, I will be disrespected, it really affects their confidence. Like this is not a person who's going to walk into the room feeling proud and like, hi, I'm Bev. They're carrying the I'm going to be disrespected. So they approach it as such. Or especially someone who's carrying a wound like I am unlikable,
Okay.
right? So if I am unlikable and they go out on a date, they're going to be like, yeah, I've dated a little, but most people don't like me. And then
The
it's a
sabotage. Maybe.
self-fulfilling
Yeah. Mm.
it's self-fulfilling prophecy because like the other person's like, well, if you don't think you're likable, why would I like you back? Right? So it's these limiting beliefs that we carry about ourselves that really have this large impact. So that's the first thing that we tackle is
Okay.
those limiting beliefs. And all of these steps are to move you towards secure attachment. We then look at your personality needs. And it's so interesting because we all have different, very specific needs based on our personality.
Mm-hmm.
So, needs, for ourselves and needs like for others that we're in a relationship with. So, I know what my physical needs are. I need this amount of sleep. I need this amount of water. Um, you know, uh, I I know that I need, you know, to see my friends or speak with them every second or third day, not 5 times a day. Like you know your own rhythms, right? And you
Yeah.
respect them. Relationship. I work with my clients to understand what relationship is that my partner is honest, transparent, and reliable. That's for those are non-negotiables for me. So if I get a sense that someone's lying to me, we're done. We work with people to understand what their what personality needs are, right? And then what they need from others. So I know if we're talking in a romantic context, I know very well after doing this work about myself that I really need from my partner in order for me to feel safe. I need my partner to be honest, transparent, and reliable.
Mm.
And so those are the things that are really important to me. and there might be another list that's important to you, but most of the time people don't take the time to figure out really what's important. And then they're in relationships and they can feel that they're unfulfilled or they're unhappy, but they don't know how to ask for what they want because they haven't really even figured out what they want. So this is actually very important work.
Yeah.
Um, and then we do work also around boundaries. So for example, folks who are anxious, preoccupied, they don't have boundaries. They often don't even understand what it means because they want to be close to their, desired affection all the time. They don't have like, the one of the things that I noticed when I first got a puppy, and I'm not equating, people to puppies, but my dog, he has a very interesting sense of self-space. Like he actually has no sense of self-space. So he comes into bed and he will actually sit on my face and I'll be like, that's just uncomfortable for me. Like you can sit next to me, but you don't have to sit
Uh,
on me.
uh-huh.
Like, and so it's interesting. Like he's got no boundaries, right? He does not, everything's fine. I've
So
seen this.
it's anxious preoccupied, your dog.
Yeah, he's very anxious actually. If I leave the room, he follows me.
Wow. So animals, they do have attachment style as well. Really?
Yep,
Wow.
yeah.
Something new.
Listen, I'm not sure that they run the full
Kidding.
gamut. Like that, I'm not fearful and dismissive and that, but we hear a lot about anxiety in pets.
Okay.
Yeah, they want to be close to their owners. Yeah. So teaching people who are anxious, preoccupied about boundaries is very important. And also teaching them to respect other people's boundaries. The anxious, preoccupied is the type of person that will just show up at your house and go, "Oh, I was thinking about you, so I thought I'd stop in and have a coffee." So it's important work. The dismissive avoidant we talked about has a very strong relationship to boundaries. Their work will be to try and soften some of their boundaries. They don't have to be so strict. And then a lot of the work is done also, like when we're talking about couples, the two things that are really big are communication, how you communicate with each other, and how you communicate with someone who's anxious, preoccupied versus dismissive avoidant is very different because they receive messages very different,
Yes.
right? So,
Okay, so should we
uh,
let's say, when before or when we are getting together, when we are starting a relationship, I'm talking about romantic relationship, should we be extremely honest in the very beginning with our partner? Okay, I'm dismissive, you are avoidant. This is what we should be talking about. This is how we should communicate. Like, should we be that honest?
I like honesty. I think that, I love honesty. I strive for it. I think honesty obviously comes with a level of vulnerability that you have to be comfortable sharing that's developed over time once trust is built. So I wouldn't say, first date, but
Take the
once
quiz.
there's a little, yeah, I mean, once there's a little bit more trust, have the conversation, but one of the fun ways you can do it is to just like go on and do a quiz together. Like, take the attachment style quiz together, take the love languages quiz, there's another quiz that's so much fun. It's by Jaya. It's the oh man, I'm gonna say it wrong. It's about a it's not called the sensuality quiz. But anyways, it's about how you get turned on sexually. The erotic blueprint, that's what it's called. The
Okay.
erotic
Wow.
blueprint. So, some of the things like when I've started dating new people, like because they know this is my work, we just have fun with it. If we're sitting in a restaurant, we're sitting at home, like, let's take a quiz together because and you answer the questions together. It's sort of fun. You get a little insight into the other person. It starts a conversation. It's great. Communication is a good thing, right? Especially when you're starting to get to know someone. So, someone who is dismissive avoidant, they really, really don't like conflict. They just like harmony in relationships. And so they really shy away from conflict. So, it would not be unusual. It's actually common as a coping mechanism that if let's say you and I are having a disagreement,
Mhm.
and let's say you're dismissive avoidant, it would be common for you to decide to stonewall, ignore my text, not answer my calls, leave the home when I'm trying to talk to you, disappear. Because you're avoiding it. You're like, nope, don't want to do, and so you avoid it, right? This is a common thing that
How about the
dismissive avoidance.
fearful avoidant? Because they are also avoidant people. Do they do the
Yeah.
same or different?
The fearful avoidant has mixes of both. So the fearful avoidant, depending on who they're interacting with. So I spent most of my life as a fearful avoidant. So if I'm with someone who's anxious preoccupied, that triggers my dismissive side. So
Okay.
I become more dismissive. If someone is dismissive towards me, I become more anxious. So I'm less organized in my approach, or I was. Now I can, move towards emotional regulation much quicker and give space where it's needed, right? But what I tell folks, especially those that are in difficult moments, like having difficult conversations, is if someone is stonewalling, like if refusing to engage or ignoring, like it's disrespectful behavior. And as an adult, I would encourage everyone to just turn around and acknowledge that you got the text. Because first of all, if you're dating an anxious preoccupied, their wound is, I will be abandoned. So by you disappearing, you're completely triggering them, right?
Yes.
And so that's just unfair. And if you understand this about your partner, why would you want to impose that distress on them? So you can, but you can hold your boundary. You can say something like, I could say to you, Joy, I know you're upset. I need a couple of hours to calm down and think about things. Can we please just meet up later tonight around 8 o'clock and talk it through?
Mm,
And usually that works, right? Usually you'll be like, okay, I'm not going to worry about it for the next 6 hours. We'll talk about it. Yeah. So that's what I encourage people to do is to find middle ground where you're not completely triggering each other, but you can respect your boundaries.
yeah. Well,
So
now
you
everything
can,
is making sense, like it depends on who you are with, and wow, it's a lot of work.
well, I mean, once you start understanding, it's so funny. It's like anything else. Once you start understanding the patterns, they become very easy to see. Like it's like I don't know if you've ever studied like dance. Have you studied dance before?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So you know that you learn with all forms of dance, you learn a set of basic moves.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have the basic moves down, then you piece the moves together in different combinations to make a choreo, right? A choreography, and you put it to music. But it's the same base moves over and over and over, right? But like in different patterns. They're
Right.
patterns. They're still the same steps, they're still the same, and it looks different, but every dance looks different, but look a little closer, you'll see exactly the same steps in every dance. So, because the base moves are the base moves.
Yeah.
So, don't get distracted by the music and the choreo and this. Focus on what's actually like the foundational moment there. And you'll see that human behavior is guided by patterns. So, it's not, it does sound like a lot of work, but it's not. It's just about understanding, first and foremost, your own mind, why you are doing, why you think the way you do, why, you say the things you do, why you behave the way you do, and then working on that. Like, and you start to feel better in your own skin. Like the natural byproduct is that you will have healthier, better relationships. So if you are in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant, for example, you can say, I know you need some time. Why don't you go take some time? We can stop the conversation here, but this is not going to go on 3 days. That's not fair. We can talk about it tonight. And usually the dismissive avoidant will go, fine, see you tonight.
I mean, yeah, this is, and thanks for the analogy about the dance because that makes so much sense now you put it that way, right? It's everything we do, playing an instrument, anything, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's about learning the basic, the foundation, the
And
theories.
then looking at the patterns.
Yeah, looking at the patterns, like become so good at seeing patterns, recognizing your own patterns, right? This has been helpful to me personally and super enlightening. I could talk to you forever, but I want to respect your time. So we can always have you back and talk about, I'm sure we can talk about so many other things, we can talk about
I'm
your love
happy
and we
to.
haven't touched on so many other things, right? So of course we can always have you back. So let's just leave it here and I don't want my listeners to be overwhelmed with all this information. So what is one thing that you think is important for my listeners to learn about today after we have talked about so many things? Like, what is one thing you want them to take away from today's episode?
The tagline that I use for my company, and I really believe is we've got this phrase that says, love is blind. And I always say, love is not blind. Love is learned. We
Mm,
learn how to love other people. And some of us learned it in our family of origin, and some of us didn't. But that's okay. We can learn it later in life. So if you don't feel like you have a good relationship to yourself, right? You don't feel a good degree of self-worth, or you don't feel peace in your heart, or you're in distress over the types of relationships that you have with other people. Start with awareness. Start to, do some research on attachment styles. Take the little free quiz on my website at securelylove.com. You can also book a 20-minute consult with me or any of the other practitioners working at Securely Loved. We are a group of practitioners working specifically in the realm of relationships and attachment trauma, and start to understand how those early relationships could have formed your perceptions and your patterns that you're running on today, right? It can be changed. I want people to know we do have effective ways to change this. So it can be changed. And it's like anything else in the body. If you decide that you want to get in shape and you make that commitment, and you need dedication, you need commitment, you need time, it's the same thing, but you absolutely can do it. And so we're here to help if you want to move in that direction.
powerful. Yeah, I will leave all your links in the show note below so people go check it out. But before you end, we always end with our final five rapid fire questions. So it's a little surprise, but
Oh, did,
so
what is
yeah.
this rapid fire question?
Yes. So these are the five questions. Actually, I changed the questions a while ago, but these are the five questions that I ask my guests at the end of the show. So every question has been answered in one word or one sentence maximum.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Right. The first question
But now
is,
I'm like nervous. I'm like, hold
oh,
on.
it's okay, just have fun. This is fun anyway. But
Okay.
they are good questions. The first question is, what is one thing you wish you knew earlier?
And happiness is a choice.
I love that. Happiness is a
Thank
choice.
you. Yeah. Okay. Great question. Wow. Okay. What's next?
You're so excited. Okay, you're gonna love the second one. If you could relive one day of your life, which day would it be?
I could relive one day of my life.
Yeah,
It's so hard. Uh, I don't believe that I've lived the day yet.
I love that. Oh my God, that's like the best answer that I have ever received. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah, I think I have an image in my mind of what the best day of my life will be, and I have not lived it yet.
I love that. I have
Thank
goosebumps.
you.
I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? Thinking that your best day is yet to come, right? That's
Yes.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so
Thank
much. Yeah, they just changed how I look at this question now. Okay, the next question. If you could master one skill that you don't currently have, what skill would it be?
I'm not sure I'll ever be able to master this, but I would greatly enjoy being invisible.
So that's hilarious. Okay.
I'm a people watcher. I observe, right? This is how I learn. I observe. I watch people in connection to each other. And so if I was invisible, like I could just sort of learn so much more, right? But
Wow. Oh, that's kind of creepy, but yeah, I mean, why not? Oh,
it
thank you
is a
so
bit
much for
creepy.
that.
Yeah.
That's so
Maybe
funny.
I could just shrink myself into like a small, I don't know.
That's so fun. Why not? I would love to be invisible as well. Okay, the next
Yeah.
question. The fourth question. If you could instantly solve one world problem, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Um, yeah, yeah, it's more than one. But the idea of a lack of food, a lack of resources, a lack of education, that there's such a high degree of our world population that doesn't have basic human needs, it breaks my heart.
Mm,
It breaks my heart, especially as a mother. I can't imagine all these children in the world that don't have basic sanitation, basic food, basic education.
mm,
Um, And it's not that we don't have enough resources in the world. It's that we are not distributing our resources properly. And so if I could somehow wave a magic wand, every child would have the food they need. They would have the safety and security that they need. And they would have base education because I believe that education changes the world.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that. Because I was thinking, you're gonna tell the 60% of the population of who are insecurely attached to become insecurely attached. No, just kidding.
I mean, but yeah, so, emotional security is very important, but before we get to emotional security, we have to look at physical
Yes. Mm,
security, safety, and security, right? And so before I can even talk about emotional, there's such a huge population of our world that doesn't have their basic, you know, safety or their basic health needs met.
yeah.
So, how can we talk about, emotional security when children don't have food to eat? We have to solve that problem first, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, the
Hmm.
last question is this is a happy question. What brings you the greatest joy?
My children.
Uh,
My children. I know it sounds like a very like cliche answer, but my children, my two boys are 18 and 20.
oh wow.
And yeah, they're 18 and 20 and they're both away at university. And I'm so incredibly proud of them for the people that they are. But I don't know if every mother says this about their kids. I find my kids really funny. Like we share a sense of humor. So like,
We got it from
yeah,
you. Yeah.
they got it from me, they got it from their dad. Like we're just so when I'm around them, I laugh a lot, right? It's just joyful. And so there's nothing that brings me more joy than my children.
Wow. No, yeah, I don't think it's cliche, right? Because I don't know, I'm not a mom, but I think it's true.
I still remember them as little boys, which they're not. But they're incredibly funny. And they like to make fun of me because I don't understand social media. They, like the whole TikTok thing, and they laugh at me with my phone. And I always say to them, listen, boys, just remember, I'm the one that taught you how to use a spoon.
Exactly. Yes. So right.
So, you know,
Don't judge me. I'm not judging you for not knowing how to use a spoon or feed yourself, right? Yes.
right. So
So
I think we're even.
yeah, sometimes I would. that's how I whenever my mom comes over and trying to figure out her new phone, and I was at the back of my mind, I wanted to say, mom, like, come on, this is easy, right? But I
It's
remember
not.
when I was a kid, you taught me everything I didn't know about the world. So that's how I changed my mindset, like just that fast. Yeah, it's about being grateful
Mhm.
for your parents for what they have done for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm like, it's a joyful place to get to a place where like they're grown up, they're good, solid people. They're healthy, thank God. They have good hearts. They're doing well in the world, and you know, it's like the fruits of your labor, right?
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate that they're healthy and they're intelligent, and so yeah, that's pure joy.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I told
Thank
you
you.
we can talk forever. But yeah, but thank you so much again for coming and sharing so generously with my listeners today. Now, again, I'll put all your links in the show note below. So people go follow Beth with your website, take your quiz today, and book a session with her. Come back and listen to this episode again and again and again because that is what I will be doing. And also, if there is a specific topic you would like to explore further, let me know. I will be happy to bring in an expert guest so that we can all learn and grow together. All right, and I will always leave you the same way as I leave you with every other episode. Show up, the world needs you, and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Bye. Thank you again for tuning into Find Joy Joyan podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and take Find Joy Joyan _podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.